Okay, so file save as, this is what it does. File save as, and here's the key. Okay, so notice by default, my system threw me into the class 4 folder. Now, for today, I'm actually going to have you make this class 5, but because we're using and resourcing the same audio, we're going to keep it in the class 4 session folder. Now, the reason why we would do save as, in most cases, is in order to keep intact an original session if we want to modify something and still be able to go back to the original session. The only way that works is if the session files, which are the ones that say .ptx, so see up here it says .ptx for class 4. When we make a class 5 and we save it in the same folder, it'll make another ptx. But the only way that works is if they stay in the folder where the audio files reside. So if when you did save as, it navigated you to some strange place, you will then need to go back and re-navigate to your folder on the data drive in the appropriate class 4 folder. For those of you who are starting new sessions today, you won't need to do this step, but you'll need to make sure you write this in your notes. So of course it's save as. Step 1 is go to file, save as. One of the big reasons we use this in the studio a lot, though, in reality, is anytime we do, like, let's say we recorded this huge session and we hadn't started editing it yet. We'll save that session, and then when it's time to do all the hard edits, we'll save that as a version 2 of the session or an edited version of the session. So we still have the original we can always go back to in the event that we edited something that we didn't mean to, or maybe we edited out too much stuff. From there, when we go to mix down, we will then also have mix variations or mix versions in different session forms. So save as mix 1, when we go to mix 2, instead of just mixing and saving it, we actually will save mix 1 and we'll go to mix 2. The reason for that is sometimes in mix downs especially, someone will really love the most up-to-date mix, but they may like one characteristic of one of the files or the tracks from the previous mix. So they may say, oh, in mix 1, I love the bass guitar. In mix 2, I love everything else. If we can just import the bass mix from mix 1 and put it into mix 2, and of course, if we have both individualized sessions saved like that, it's easy to do. It's not very complicated. So that's why we would use this, and that's why we can get away with continuously resaving inside of the same session folder. When we can't really save inside the same session folder, or when it's not most appropriate to, is of course when we're starting a full new session that has all new audio files that need to be separately isolated or cataloged. So if I was going to make a whole new session and we did a whole bunch of stuff, but what we're going to do today is we're going to work from the class 4 session. So please, you can go ahead and do this real quick so we can move into the next phase, and you can just leave this on screen. You're going to do file save as, retitle it class 5, make sure it sits inside of your class 4 folder. Good? And then go ahead and hit OK or save. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to work that out and get these guys up and running. Okay, so another thing I do actually want to point out, when you, just as a tip, when you open your previously created Pro Tools session, because of all that I/O mapping we have to do and that playback engine selection we have to do in the startup procedure, if you were to skip that startup procedure and just open up the PTX session, the system tries to typically resolve any I/O issues that it sees. And so if you had done the session at home and had a different interface and brought it to school and just tried to open the session without doing the startup procedures, it's going to try to conform to the original mapping that you used at home. And it won't automatically revert to assigning it to the new mapping we have here. When you go and reconfigure the I/O and then open it, if it's from another location, what it'll do is it'll auto remap to the new I/O setup. If auto remapping does not work, you'll end up having to clear the I/O not from the setup menu, but you'll have to clear the I/O from the session and reassign each individual track in terms of the I/O. It happens quite a bit, but it's not a very lengthy procedure. The goal is to avoid, the big thing is to avoid bringing in a session from a different location, opening it up, and having it remap the I/O and the I/O settings. As long as we can avoid that, and we can maintain the I/O settings that we prefer at any different location on any different computer, then it makes it very easy and fluid to work with. Today what we're going to cover immediately, let me just make sure we're on track. Okay, we're going to talk about two different things. In your notes, I would like for you to write the following. I'm going to give you the information, but we're going to focus on two of these today. Edit modes, heading edit modes. Now there are several different edit modes. We're going to focus on the main ones, the two main ones today, and we'll do the secondary ones next week. So edit modes. Those are the 4 edit modes that we see. There's actually a 5th hidden mode here. Absolute grid, and there's actually a shuffle. Let's see, where is it? How's that not right there? Oh, it doesn't seem to do it. Oh, it is. There's a shuffle grid combination mode. But let's talk about these from the start, and we'll focus on our first 2 today. So essentially, the four main edit modes that you see here, and there's a 5th hidden in the grid, like sub-edit mode, are slip, grid, shuffle, and spot. And you can see those in the top corner there. If you just write those down with room to write a definition behind them, we'll define them real quickly, and then we'll move on to the 2 that we want to use today that are most frequently used by most users. It just depends on what you're doing. So slip, grid, shuffle, and spot. Now you need to know these edit modes because we brought in some audio. We're going to edit it today. And in order to edit it effectively, we have to know which mode we're in. Okay? So slip, grid, shuffle, spot. Let me know when you guys you got that, because we're going to talk about define the first 2. And I'm just going to give you very street language definitions here that will hopefully click with you. All right, slip mode. You can move anything, anywhere, in any frame of time. All right, so slip mode, anything, anywhere, in any frame of time when you're making edits. And this is in the edit window, so when I'm talking about these edit modes, it's when I'm talking about what you can do with the clips, how you can edit the clips and move those waveforms and MIDI and stuff around. So in slip mode, anything, anywhere, at any time. So slip mode is whenever you need to manually drop something into a position. Okay? Grid mode only allows moves to be locked to the grid. So essentially it only allows moves to be locked to the grid. Now, you don't have to write this down, but it's a user-defined grid. You will choose the grid. So it's not like you're oblivious to what the grid is. You actually choose the grid. If we do that at the early onset of the session, then it makes life easier. So it's locking to the grid. All of your moves are forced to be locked to the grid, which means you can't drop it anywhere. You can try to drop it anywhere. It'll drop it to the nearest neighboring grid. Okay? In shuffle mode, essentially what shuffle mode does is shuffle mode moves all items to the farthest leftmost in time. So shuffle mode moves all items to the farthest leftmost in time. Shuffle mode, you don't have to write this down. Shuffle mode is awesome for voiceovers. Shuffle mode is the easiest way to do voiceovers. Because voiceovers are a little bit oblivious to time frame, and they don't have to be forced to a grid. But again, you're going to see these shuffle mode and spot mode we'll do next week. Today we're going to do slip and grid. Spot mode requires a specific, you can write this down, spot mode requires a specific spot sync point. So spot mode requires a specific spot sync point. Spot mode requires a specific spot sync point. So spot mode is designed for post-production, film, Foley, effects, dialogue. What happens is if we were working on a video and we could see that at a specific frame an explosion starts, that spot sync point would be on the timeline. We would see it in the main counter, and we'd be able to say, okay, at a minute and 13 seconds, or at frame 205, at that exact point in time, that's where that edit needs to take place. So spot mode allows us to be able to drop in particular edits and file clips immediately to a location in time without having to guess it, essentially.
So does that mean like you can do like multiple edits on one track, but it's in different times?
Yes.
Oh.
Absolutely, yeah. So in the tracks, you can do lots. I mean, there's a lot of different edit variations you can do per track, but you can actually use each of these modes simultaneously, or I should say simultaneously, in accordance. They have to be done one by one, but they can all be edited in that format on a single track.
When you say editing, you mean
Editing could be anything from cutting a file up, making it shorter, making it longer, deleting parts of it, essentially doing fades, things like that, mixing it up. Let's say that we just, let's just say that I had you all read a sentence, okay, and I decided I wanted to take everybody's voice and chop it up so that everybody says one word of the sentence, so that we all say the full sentence, but it literally goes, I hope you are having a great day today, or whatever, and everybody's cut up that way. All those edits could be residing on the same track. You know what I mean? And those are how you, I'm going to show you some of these things, but that's basically how you clean up the audio. In most cases, and this is a really important thing, okay? In most cases in studio sessions, edits are really, really key to having a professional sounding recording. Edits are very, very key to things like voiceovers. In a voiceover scenario, anybody ever, do a voiceover or understand, kind of have that kind of, in a voiceover scenario, typically this is what happens in a voiceover scenario. Someone reads a script, and if they jumble up that script, they just do it again. If they drop a line in the middle of that script, they will not just stop and wait for the engineer to stop and start over again. If they screw up a line, they literally just take a pause and start again. And the editor essentially gets to seamlessly edit that so that it all just sounds like it came out perfectly, but in reality it was done over a period of time and it had a lot of variations and a lot of versions so that they could kind of pick and choose which ones they like. Now in reality, go into the studio, edits are made to every drummer, every drum performance, every bass performance, every guitar performance, every keyboard performance. I mean, any musician that plays anything has edits done in the studio, and the only time that you're really fixed and you're not able to do edits is if everybody was playing live in the room with each other without a metronome or without any click orientation, and because of their liveness, they bleed into one another's mics. Then it's very hard and difficult to do edits, especially edits for time, because you'll hear it shift in time. You'll hear like a ghost sound through the bleeding of the mics. But in most cases, if you're doing it as an overdub for most studio sessions, drummer's going to get in there and do 10 versions of the best variations of the song. They'll do a bunch of amazing fills that can be just dropped in to the song as well. Vocalists do the same thing. I mean, vocalists will take weeks upon weeks to get the takes right, and after that time, someone goes in and goes, all right, with the producers and the client, these are the best vocal takes. Let's chop them all up and put them all together. In most cases, every vocal version that you've ever heard go to radio has been pieced together line by line. And it's not because they can't perform the lines, it's because they're looking for the best, most, if they're doing it correctly, they're looking for the best, most emotionally attached version of the performance. There's performing it well, and then they're taking it to the next level where it actually has that it factor. So, like a lot of times, you're literally like every phrase has been cut up and put on. And even beyond that, a lot of the best vocalists out there have really poor sense of timing. So every time you ever hear them land on a beat, most of the time it's nudged as an edit.
When does it make sense to be live recording all at once?
It makes sense if it's a time constraint. It makes sense if the group has the ability to do live, or if that's kind of the vibe they want to have. There's an artist, Brandy Carlisle. They did a live, and she's actually pretty large in the more folk acoustic community. But because of her band style, it's a very more folk-oriented band with some electric guitar and still drums and things like that. But it's very earthy, very natural. They did an album, 4 or 5 years ago, and they did it all to analog tape. And they did all those cuts live, all standing in the same room. They wanted that vibe. But then on the next album, they go back in and do overdubs. They're like the standard. So it just depends on the vibe. In reality, like what you're really going for. In most cases, it's very difficult to in the live setup. It's very difficult to be experimental. And a lot of artists like to get in the studio and create the experimental. So in order to do that best, they prefer to record separately and try crazy things and do amazing edit, things like that. So anyway, so the two we're going to use today, slip and grid. Okay. So let's start off in slip mode. And what we're going to do is if you could just, again, you're going to jot some notes down, but I want to talk about what slip mode does and how slip mode reacts to your main tool sets, because then we're going to take it from slip and we're going to drop into grid mode and see the real difference here, okay?